We'll get started. It's 3:30. My name is Gary Totten. I'm the Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And I'm happy to be here, my first Elsevier conference. So very, very interesting and informative. Thank you for coming. My talk is largely descriptive of something that we do at UNLV for new chairs, and then how that's connected to other leadership initiatives at the university. So I'd love to hear what you all are doing during Q&A, if you have any feedback about this particular program I'm going to describe. So the new chair, Summer New Chair Bootcamp is organized and facilitated by myself and my Office of Faculty Affairs colleagues. And we intend it to be a model for department chair training, but also to foster an effective campus leadership culture. So the boot camp consists of 6 summer sessions. They're short. They're 1 hour and 15 minutes. We feel like chairs are busy enough already. These are new chairs. They're overwhelmed. And during these sessions, department chairs, and also we lump in directors because they kind of function as department chairs on our campus. They are introduced to key aspects of and resources for the chair role. And here are some of the sessions, or here are the topics that we cover during the sessions. So, and you'll see that some of them are kind of doubled up. Like I said, we only have 6 sessions. We intentionally did that so that there would not be it wouldn't have to take the whole summer. It's only the month of July. So some of the sessions are kind of doing double duty. So you'll see like things lumped together, and I'll explain more about that. But so first of all, the role and core responsibilities of the chair, and then we also talk about performance management during that session. The second session is key to success, situational awareness, and teaching resources. The third session is a Q&A with the provost. That's a little more informal. The fourth session is data-informed decision-making, advocating for your unit. And then we have another Q&A panel with experienced chairs. And finally, we have tenure and promotion and annual evaluations. And that's the moment when we talk about Interfolio, because we use Interfolio to manage those things on our campus. So through this initial boot camp for new chairs and follow-up sessions throughout the year for all department chairs, the Office of Faculty Affairs is responding to calls from deans and the provost that we need to have a more robust and sustainable leadership pipeline for departments on our campus. So maybe this is true of all campuses, but in the last few years, it's been hard sometimes to get folks to step up and be a department chair. So this is part of that effort, and I'll explain kind of how we're doing that. In addition, the boot camp and its associated programs, I think, and I'll talk about this a bit at the end, create goodwill, foster a collegial community of effective leaders. And of course, that's among the chairs themselves, but also between the chairs and my office, Faculty Affairs, and between the chairs and the provost's office and other vice provosts and folks who I invite to come to these sessions. And so in the end, we hope, and I do feel like I see this happening, that it contributes to a more supportive and professional campus culture. So the first session is largely intended to discuss the role and responsibilities of the chair, but I do begin the boot camp with the boot camp objectives. So here they are. So we want to provide an overview of the expected responsibilities of a chair, overview of the processes, software, platforms, tools, people that they need to interact with regularly to perform their role. We want to introduce them to processes and data sources that can assist them in decision making and allow them to learn the provost's perspective on the department chair role through that Q&A session. Provide additional resources they might ask for during this boot camp, changes every year, what the new chairs are asking for. And then finally, to learn from those who are experienced in the role, and that's that Q&A session with experienced department chairs. So during this first session, I then, like I said, I share with them the university's general position description for chairs. Each unit might tweak this somewhat, but some units don't use it at all. So this is sometimes the first time that chairs would even see this. And they go, what? There's a position description. Most of them are faculty, and at least at UNLV, we don't have position descriptions for faculty, which is probably true for most of you. And so looking at a position description is kind of a foreign notion for somebody who's gone from faculty to an administrative position. One thing that's, I think, helpful about these position descriptions is even though it's general, it also breaks down the tasks into maybe how much percentage of your time you would allot to different kinds of things. Again, it's very general and meant to be, somewhat generic for everybody, but we have a good discussion about like how would you be using your time? What would be some ways to devote time to this or that? So I think it's useful. So we do that. I also discuss in this first session how a department chair's role is really broken down into leadership and management. And there might be some other pieces of this, but these are the two main ones that occur to me. So for example, as leaders, I talk about how they'll be focused on things like representing and advocating for their department, developing a department vision, providing effective mentoring, professional development for faculty, especially new faculty, providing ongoing performance counseling, or leading strategic planning efforts. And then we talk about, as managers, they would be doing different kinds of things like managing curriculum, course schedules, enrollment, hiring, all the nuts and bolts stuff, right? GA budgets, workload, department space, et cetera. So that's what we spend the first half of that session doing. The second half is on performance management. Not just annual evaluations, but also we talk about how it's important to offer ongoing and consistent feedback to faculty and staff throughout the year, especially to kind of, if problems start to arise, to make sure you address those things early and often. So we talk about that. I introduce them to university resources that they have at their disposal to manage performance issues. Again, for some of these folks, it's the first time they're a supervisor and they're not really quite aware of how does employee relations work, what's the Ombuds office, those kinds of things, right? Title IX. So we talk about all those resources, and we talk about my office, Office of Faculty Affairs, which coordinates a lot of that activity. The second session, I encourage them to use our institutional membership to academic impressions. I don't know if any of you have academic impressions, but we do, and what I like about it is that there's a lot of good leadership webinars, I think, that are free to us as institutional members. And so this is a bit of a teaser to get them to use it, right? So I show them a brief clip of this webinar that's called Key to a Chair's Success, Situational Awareness. I just show them the intro and show them how to log in and encourage them to start using that. And I like this webinar because situational awareness, the way that it's defined in the webinar, is a strategic awareness of the chairs and the department's relationship to the university, larger university, and to the college, and then how to leverage that understanding to make requests or to ask for things or request resources and things like that. Again, and I myself went from faculty to chair and didn't necessarily think that way about advocating for my department. So that's what we do the first half of that session. The second half, I invite the Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning Innovation and her team, and she comes in and talks about campus resources for teaching, especially those that are available to department chairs and how they could support teaching effectiveness in their departments. All right, the third session is this Q&A with the provost. It allows the provost to share her perspective on what she thinks about the department chair role. As probably all your provosts would say too, it's the hardest job in the university, right? You're in between faculty and upper administration. You're kind of a middle manager. But she does a great job. She's new in her role. She's an acting provost, but she did a great job. This was just last week. I think helping the chairs feel at ease. She's a very smart, personable person, and they could see that she was approachable. She talked many times about, I'm open, please contact Gary, contact me, we're the provost office, are here to help you. So I thought it was a really nice kind of collegial session. Each of these sessions are different when folks start asking questions. Just to give you an example, since we held this session earlier this week, these are the things they asked the provost about. So they asked her about how to deal with complaints from faculty and students, supporting international graduate students, which is on many folks' minds, of course, space management, remote work policies, and working with faculty senate. So runs the gamut, right? In the fourth session, guess I did that wrong. Okay, advocating for your unit. So I invite another vice provost to this session. So this is the VP for decision support. And so he comes and he shares with new chairs various data dashboards that have been created at UNLV so that they can use to make decisions and craft requests for resources. That's a very helpful session. Most folks, most new chairs don't know about these data dashboards. He also talks about UNLV's dynamic resource allocation model, which is affectionately known as DRAM. It's kind of a pejorative word. Oh, DRAM. It happens 2 to 3 times a year, and it's the process by which departments make requests to deans, who make requests to the provost for new faculty lines. But it always feels like kind of a mystery. So part of the point here is to demystify, because it should not be a mystery. They should know exactly what they need to do, how to tap into these data dashboards and other metrics to be able to make strong arguments. So I think that's really useful. We also talk in this session about just other resources that we have on campus to help them track the productivity of their faculty and so forth, including Interfolio, which we spend much more time in the last session. All right, the 5th session is another Q&A session, this time with experienced department chairs. I think this is one of the most useful sessions of the boot camp, actually, because again, it's a way to create rapport and collegiality among chairs. If any of you have been chairs, you know that you do need your fellow chairs to get advice from, to vent to commiserate with, and they are your peer group, and they're very, very helpful. So the new chairs have a new cohort of folks they can talk to, but these experienced chairs are there to also offer help and be part of their network. So I think that's a really useful session. The experienced chairs talk about things like what I wish I knew when I was a new chair, or things like that. So, and then, like I said, the 6th session is about tenure and promotion and annual evaluations. So we provide them with information about the timeline, procedures for faculty reporting, annual evals, tenure and promotion, which is all run through Interfolio, FAR, and RPT, and the university bylaws governing these processes. And speaking of bylaws, we also talk about policies and bylaws related to any grievances they might encounter with the outcome of these processes. And again, I bring the folks from my office who are specifically experts in Interfolio, and they come and they talk about those kinds of things. And I ask the chairs to bring their devices so they can follow along. They log in. These processes are complex, of course, so 1 hour and 15-minute session in the summer is not going to do it, but it's a nice intro, I think, and we offer another specific session in the fall for new chairs about Interfolio again, and there's always one-on-one opportunities. We just kind of keep rinsing and repeating with that. And we do make sure that they know if you have any problems, glitches, confusions, please reach out immediately. And I have a very responsive team who reply right back to somebody who wants to have a question answered about Interfolio. So there's lots of avenues for ongoing support, and I think that's key. I think someone mentioned that yesterday in a session about ongoing training and support. So I mentioned earlier that there's an interest in UNLV in leadership training, leadership pipelines, and so these new chair sessions are connected to other sessions throughout the year. So I call these chairs council sessions, and they're once a month. And this is for all chairs, not just new chairs. And we also talk about other professional development opportunities for training leaders, including another program that I run out of my office called Leadership Pathways. And we were also lucky, we have an EAB membership or institutional membership, and EAB reached out about 8 months ago and said, hey, we have a chair training session we'd like to pilot with some universities. Would you be willing? I said, yes, please let us do it. And they said it was for chairs, but I wanted to gear it to aspiring chairs and chairs. And we have 20 folks in that. It's six different sessions. The first session was on campus, and the rest of them are virtual, and they'll continue into the fall. And I'm really happy that most of those folks in that 20-person cohort are aspiring chairs, which I think is a good sign that people want to be a chair and they want to get training on how to be a chair. So I saw that as a good sign. So we'll see how that goes. It's free for now. I don't know that we'll use it again, but there's a lot of good information in there that we're thinking about as a team in my office about how would we offer this kind of training going forward. I guess then the last point I want to make about, or not the last one, but another point I want to make about these monthly chair council meetings and the other kinds of leadership things that we have going on is that I do try to tie the topics that we introduce in the boot camp into these ongoing monthly chair meetings. So things like interfolio, like I said, tenure promotion, but also strategic decision making, especially when DRAM time comes around and they need to be starting to think about crafting arguments to their deans about what kind of positions they want. There's always questions about how do I manage ADA, Title IX, FMLA, remote work requests, so we talk about that a lot. We talk about strengthening department culture. And again, I refer them not just to the trainings that we've created, but to things like academic impressions. We also have a membership to National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity, which has really great faculty development programming, if any of you are members of that. So there are some outcomes from this boot camp. The first is that I see it as fostering a sustainable leadership pipeline. And as I mentioned, one of the concerns I hear from deans especially, filtered sometimes through the provost, so the provost lets me know as well, is how challenging it is to find people willing in departments to step up and be department chairs. So the new chair boot camp itself does not directly contribute to the pipeline issue because the people in the boot camp are already chairs, but I think the way it contributes is that it's pretty well known now that we have this summer boot camp, and as a support for new chairs, right? And deans know about it, they talk about it with aspiring chairs. And so I don't think that convinces anybody to be a chair necessarily, but it does indicate, it does, telegraph to people at UNLV that are interested in being leaders that there are support, mechanisms in place, right, to help them become a strong leader, to support them as they are a leader, and those kinds of things. So I do think it helps with the pipeline in that way. I also mentioned the Leadership Pathways program, which is also facilitated by me in my office, but that's not just for chairs, that's for leaders, including administrative faculty and others. I mentioned earlier too that I feel like it generates goodwill and fosters collegiality to have this boot camp and its associated programs, not just between the chairs themselves, but between the chairs and my office. I think it breaks down, I don't know. Again, as a faculty member, I remember the distrust that, faculty have towards administration, right? And I'm not saying we're completely breaking down that distrust or that suspicion. Suspicion's a better word. It's less onerous, maybe. But, through these sessions, we are emphasizing over and over again that we are a resource to you. We want you to be successful. Please reach out. And folks do start to reach out. So I think that's working. Let's see. I also think, overall that this boot camp can contribute to a supportive and professional campus culture. I think one of the chief benefits, in my opinion, of the summer boot camp and the ongoing training is that chairs are better able to manage challenging faculty behavior and other issues. I mentioned early on that one of the first session of the boot camp, we talk about performance management. And I don't know, as having been a chair and seeing what chairs deal with, that does seem to be a chief issue, right? Is performance management. And how to successfully do that. And so we talk about how in these sessions, intervening before problems become, out of control or unmanageable. I think also that the specific training, we give them an interfolio, especially related to things like tenure and promotion and how those are linked to bylaws and policies that the university helps to perhaps ward off problems down the line, right? For a new chair that might be sort of doing things out of kind of compliance with some of those bylaws, if they're aware of them, they can sort of avoid the grievances and so forth that come later on. So I see that also as a positive. So in the end, this new Chair Bootcamp and the other leadership programming intentionally fosters a more supportive leadership culture at UNLV. And I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have about it.